my presentation is on emphasizing the importance of building strong institutions, and that came out in Prof's presentation. And that's the title of mine is building strong institutions. Institutions are critical for development and transition of societies to nation state. So you can find out that we are talking about nation state institutions and transition. But I'm going to have a slightly more hands-on. When I say more, I'm not saying step down to people in the field, being the field person as well. So I'm going to first of all say, okay, what's Sub-Saharan Africa? We can see on the slide. I'm doing a slide as well, presentation, just to visualize. Many people learn through visualization as well, and follow things better through visualization. So that's what we have that consists of Sub-Saharan Africa. We can see, apart from the 54 states in Africa, only about 6 are not in Sub-Saharan Africa. And what do we know about Sub-Saharan Africa? We hear about poverty, underdevelopment. I mean, when you want to read anything about what's wrong in Africa, what's wrong in the world, it's about Sub-Saharan Africa. It's underdevelopment and all that. So, but I'm bringing this together, the theme being social, political, and economic stability. What I want to do is approach this presentation from the problems, the encumbrances, and the challenges, because from there we begin to know about the importance, because the importance are boundless. So if we look at this, what we have in the pie here, we see that 56% of the world poor are in Sub-Saharan Africa. But again, we check, we are not the only region that was colonized. So why is it so? Prof touched on a lot of the statehood issues, and I think that is fundamental to why we can't move or leverage from where we are at the minute. But then there are other issues too, because the world has moved on. There are different opportunities now in the world. It's not, the path to development that used to be. There are outsourcing countries, countries like India and the rest are outsourcing destinations. So why is this happening? So a brief background here, the estimated population of Sub-Saharan Africa is 1.1 billion, and it has 12% of the world population, but that it only accounts for 2% of GDP combined. So you find out that what we are doing with the 1.1 billion people, our GDP is just the equivalent of France put together. Spain, which is about only 46 million. Now we export primarily primary commodities. Why is this so? That will come to it as well. Now, what is happening is that when you export primary commodities, the employment rates ratio, rate to size of the economy, it's difficult to establish that, because you're doing primary commodities, there are no value chains. You're just exporting. You haven't been able to develop value chains for the economy to expand, for people to become employed and all that. And again, this region is also low in terms of interregional trade. Trade between Sub-Saharan Africa is very low. We trade more with the external world because we do primary commodities. Now, if we went into value chains, it might be more trade between us. So when we talk of colonial legacies and all these things, some of the issues, we're going to come to some of the issues why we don't trade more within us. Now, in terms of forex earning, we found that tourism, the service sector, tourism is where a lot of the stability of the economy is. And you find that in the eastern part of Africa, which is Sub-Saharan Africa. Now, we, again, Sub-Saharan Africa are net recipients of remittances, 42 billion, they said, down to, in 2020, it was more than that, and Nigeria accounts for 40%. There is a YouTube link there where at your time, you can copy that and paste it, just, you listen to it, but we're not gonna go there now. We might come up back to it where if we need to. Can we get the next slide, please? Yes. Now, so I'm going to, since we're approaching it from economic, political, and social, now, economic instability, we are unable to leverage on the modest growth into sustainable development or to transform, and what they call a convergence. That is, you find that often in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, we come at a point, we either drop down, we hardly elevate to the next level. why is this so? So it's a convergence of many factors that allows economies to move up. And most of the time, we should be talking about technological convergence. When you're making, for example, the production of Gari, have we been able to elevate it from the frying and the open and spreading it out in the open? Are we able to take that technology up and move further? Well, that is what China is doing. Here, China is going to vast production of Gari and put us out very soon. Okay, inability to promote value chain, same thing as we had spoken earlier on, because of the 95% primary produce-based economies, we are able to produce value chain because of sectors such as the livestock industry monopolized or locked into a kind of primary kind of production. They are unable to open up, other value chain actors in that. So there's low domestic resource mobilization. And what does that mean? Taxation level is low because we don't have people employed where you can tax people, generate revenue from taxation, and then expand the economy. And then you have sectors that are involved in domestic resource mobilization. And then we plan without data. You see, we can talk about all these things. If you have nation states in perfect conditions, you plan without data, you're not going to go anywhere. All the countries where the African leaders come today to send their kids to school and come to medical attention or whatever, they have data, they work with data. And when the colonial people came, they tried to introduce data, but we didn't pick it up. We have a phobia for data for political reasons. Now there's exclusion from the global trade. Well, this has happened economically, and as resulted in this instability, we are unable to leverage or get into the agglomerization advantages of international trade. Now, on the political side, tensions from colonial legacies, the Prof has mentioned that, identity politics, now not politics of value. You can find, again, we always use Nigeria as an example. You have people elected in one party, as their interest is not served, they are moving the whole community into another party, causing instability. Because as soon as they're in one party, they are energizing, they're throwing red meat, they're gaslighting people. And then when their interest is not served, they move to another party, you find that instability happens because it's not value-based politics. Focus on a public service sector. The private sector is not focused upon. Also, I'm not apologist for colonial legacies, but some of the focus on the developing our public institutions, we have become addicted to that. We don't see the private sector as where the jobs are really created, because that's where you create jobs. It's not about creating a ministry, putting tables and asking people to go and be on a payroll. No, that's not productive. So the focus on public service, which is a legacy which we have taken, we need to get ourselves detoxed from that. Now, the private sector suffers government policies focused on, a continuation of that point. The quest to control political power as a means of social mobility, rather than engaging in productivity. We are across sub-Saharan Africa, people think that social mobility is about getting into government, holding public offices. And of course, this is reinforced by the sort of policies that also come out and the way people jostle for positions, in this sector. Now, low economic productivity, and it has implications for fragility. The Prof has mentioned fragility, but I'm getting to the substructure. What is structurally responsible for that fragility? Now, countries are grouping around that are, grappling with nation-state building, like we are all in sub-Saharan Africa. Identity sort of promotes mutual distrust, anxiety, the politics of state capture, instead of values and common good. These are essentially, no matter how, whether colonized, decolonized, or new, if the politics is about state capture, that is what it is going to not get you any development. Politics of state capture between groups that breeds political instability. Now let's go to the social angle on the next slide, please. On the social instability part, the tensions from political, so you can see the connection between these things. They're intersected, interrelated. You can't really take one from the other. You see, it fills us down to dysfunctional institutions. We have institutions that are dysfunctional, institutions that promote, a mindset of exclusion, a mindset of capture. Now, where you're in government, your people are, benefit. And then, of course, this fuels corruption because it's your turn and you have to, it's your turn to capture the state. Institutions emerge. Now, normally, what the difference is that institutions emerge from shared values and shared aspirations. But once we don't have these shared values and shared aspirations, you find that resilient institutions cannot emerge. And now shared aspirations would also come in, play because when you feel that your interest is negotiated in the state, you begin to have a shared aspirations. You can't have shared aspirations when you think you don't belong, when you think your interest is not served. And that goes back to what the prof also said. Instability to generate shared values and consensus in win-win situations. Now, inability to achieve effective and evidence-based social policies. We, like I said, we don't rely on data. We don't want data because it's probably going to show some of the weaknesses of political interests we have. That then policies are done basically in abstract. People sit and just decide policies. They don't look at the pilots project. They don't see if it's something that they're to improve and to replicate across the region. That is not happening. Inequity and inequality becomes normalized and reproduces itself and reproduces unstable societies. Now, the disincentive for social capital capacity across ethnic groups as neighbors now become entrenched. Now, but then, now if we look at this, the graph here, what I'm trying to cast our mind is the growing gap. Now we have now found, mentioned all the problems. Let's start looking at the solutions or where we are. Now you see that there's a growing gap between Sub-Saharan Africa as a region with the rest of the world. You can see that in the years, between 2019 and today, where we are, the rest of the world is going very far, and we are quite lag behind. And why is this so? Because wage labor employment ratio to labor force is very low. We have not been able to, basically open up and form value chain actors in the economy. So we are going to come to why are we not able to form these value chain actors? How can Sub-Saharan Africa move from the basic needs situation it is today, which is food, water, shelter, and security, which other nations, and even those we were at par with at independence, have long left us. A lot of them are not talking about basic need now. They've moved on. They're talking of, So South Africa needs a growth with depth. And I have the acronym there: diversification, exports, competitiveness, productivity, increase productivity, technological convergence, and the human well-being to improve human conditions. This is taken from the African Center for Economic Transformation, that acronym there. And the link there is also to a very 1 minute video that will encapsulate that. So how did other countries with political experience overcome this? Remember that we are not the only ones with the colonial legacy. We always talk about economic plan for the colonial, rightly so, but then other people have formed their form. So what's the problem now? Now, structural reforms, back again to structure. People don't like it when you talk of restructuring, but it means a lot of things like this. And then, the meat of the thing is building strong institutions is critical for the development and transition of economies into nation states. Because if you find out, for example, in the US today, previously we emphasized democracy. From democracy, you see development, but it's not always going to be that way. There are states today that are not democratic or don't have democracy, but are developing. The UAE are there, the Saudi are there. There are so many of them. But I'm not saying democracy is bad, but it's not basically what we need. What we need are strong institutions, and that is what actually leverages the economy. You can see how in the US, the democracy took a beating, but it got tested, but it was, of course, the institutions that salvaged the situation. Now, so can you go back to the former slide, just back again? I'm not sure I had captured. Yeah. So so the focus on to refocus on building institutions as a foundation for growth and democracy. You know, both rely on strong, resilient institutions, which is the growth itself, economic growth and democracy rely on strong institutions. Now, on the political side, countries should commit to negotiated and inclusive structures for a cohesive nation state. So when we are saying, oh, Nigeria is not negotiable, you hear all that kind of stuff. I mean, no, there's nothing, anything that's not negotiable is a prison. You have to consistently and continuously keep renegotiating, because we are not homogeneous people. We are very different in many ways. And we are, as I say, colonial project. We are actually meant to be a business project, but we turned into nation states. So we have to continuously, negotiating. We can't say, well, something was cast in stone. Nothing was cast in any way. In any case, a lot of the countries that were formed got disrupted by military situations and eras that reconfigured many things that were not in the original state. So strong laws to protecting political processes, when we come down to that, and to foster the emergence of value-based politics, the censorship, to censor the manipulation of party primaries, like it happens across sub-Saharan Africa. You find out that there'll be laws, there'll be democracy and everything, but then certain interest groups manipulate this process. We have to look at those sort of things. If we emphasize, if there's an emphasis placed on the party nomination, for example, then it should be protected. Manipulation and inducement should have censorship consequences. Resize the size of your political system, resizes to fit and reflect your income, the size of your economy. You don't say you want to take something from the US and then bastardize it, expand it, even paying your people more than what other governments pay. You have to resize these things to fit and reflect your economy. Minimize extraneous influence on local politics, the idea of the center deciding what happens in the region and all that. These are causes of, remember, it's about instability. So we're looking at causes of instability. Encourage South-South regional peer review. I think Obasanjo and the rest started that at one point, but we forgot about it. This kind of encourages us to learn new things and to encourage conformity and compliance with some of the values we want to bring in. And on the economy side, this is where the penny drops. We need to start looking at light manufacturing as a path to economic diversification. The whole idea of Nigeria producing its vehicle, or some, producing plane, the army producing a, tank and all that, we don't need that. There are countries doing this things more efficiently. Find a niche for yourself in the global economy right now. Get into light manufacturing. This is how the Asian countries we were at par with, the Singapores and the rest of them. This is how they did it. Go find money so that you become an outsourcing economy. So there has to be a long-term strategy, not about achieving industrialization, quote, but light manufacturing to service, these other companies that are foreign direct investors. When you see the people in the value chain who can service an investment you want to do, you are attracted to go there. Now, so a commitment to clear medium-term and long-term policies that consider light industrialization is one element Sub-Saharan Africa needs to consider very seriously. Support, we are a lot of agri-based. You have to turn back there, support agri-value chains as well. How the Vietnam did it, and China, the plug and play. What is plug and play? Because you are operating where actors don't have finance, they don't have collateral, so they can't be in the regular, system where they can go to banks. Now, what does the state do? The developmental state, as Prof said, creates these conditions where cooperatives can use certain facilities, plug and play, and it cuts it reduces the tension and the need to borrow and invest like other countries do. So we need to look at these models, outward-oriented trade policies. So we become outsourcing destination like India is doing now. If I take my phone now and want to order something, I'm most likely going to be answered by somebody from India. But it's a company right here in the back of the door here. Even the telephone service I use here, sometimes somebody in India is answering because they've made themselves an outsourcing for high technology. So they are in that business. We could be that hub in regional hubs. We can create regional hubs for these things. So transform the livestock industry again. That is where another tension is coming in countries like Nigeria and the West Africa sub-region as a whole. The livestock industry is based on some primitive production system where a certain set of tribe are basically there. They need to open up these things, unlock those places so that you can, some people get into the production of hay, production of grass, transportation of grass. You're expanding the economy. At the same time, you have people doing these things, paying their taxes, and you have domestic resource mobilization. Now it brings us to the issue of oil mineral rich countries. I just want to talk about this. I thought it would be important to drop it in. You see, there's a divergent growth path within the region, within countries that are non-oil resource rich are actually the ones that are growing and are the most dynamic economies and are the ones that are able to withstand shocks. Where we have the supposedly rich, oil-rich countries are the ones that are most backward now in terms of growth. They are not resilient, and they're the ones with the biggest problems of insecurity and instability. Why is this so? You find also it's about downstream, not being in the downstream economy. So so this graph shows a picture that, look, it's not really about oil. There are certain regions without oil that are doing great jobs. And I think it shouldn't be a reason why not to renegotiate, because actually those regions that don't produce oil actually do better. Let's go to the summary. Now the summary would be diversification competitiveness of medium scale business in domestic and global markets. Now, comparative low wage gives sub-Saharan advantage over Asia. As of now, we are the low level production area is where it has more competitive advantage. But before that becomes an advantage, we have to create professionalism. We have to have our value chains ready to get into the system. The low level of wage doesn't mean anything if you don't have the value chain where foreign direct investors can, basically niche out there. So enabling light manufacturing and outsourcing is it. Now, facilitating private sector in agribusiness value chain, as mentioned, reposition the local government and to play a central role in apprenticeship and capacity building. Because when you have a big centralized system, there's a lot of inefficiencies. If I borrow the teaching from the operations and value chain, supply chain, you find out that a centralized system, there's a lot of inefficiencies in the middle, and you lose a lot of stuff. If we go back to the tiers of local government and begin to do these things here, a lot of the bandits and crisis we find is because a lot of things are not operating at the local government level. So, and that is where you have people who are uneducated, people who are half educated, people who are educated and now don't have a job. And of course, instability sets in. So evidence-based and data-supported policies is fundamental. All dependent and all have to depend on recalibrating the political process, repositioning the governance structure. It's very, very important. So I think in a very quick way, it was loaded, but what I tried to do was basically to set very tangible and practical solutions to some of the theories and some of the assumptions that come with the IMF, World Bank economy theories.